Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we're going to talk about, same as last time, two things. We've got the competition section of the business plan homework, and then we also have the customer service component of the business skill development. So we're going to start with the business plan homework, specifically the competition section, pages 15 to 27. So before we get into the actual pieces of the competition that I want you to take a look at, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the different types of competition. So there's the direct competitors, and these are the ones that you're probably most familiar with. Those are businesses that compete directly with the products and services that you're selling. Restaurant to restaurant, retail store to retail store, specific services like living tax service versus H&R Block. You also need to be aware of indirect competitors. And those are the competitors that are offering products or services that compete for the same budget line item. So kind of think of a family budget. There's a finite amount of money. And when it comes to discretionary spending, a family may go bowling, eat at a restaurant, or go to a movie. So in that case, all three of those industries indirectly compete with each other for that same budget line item. And then there's also something called the ambivalence factor. And that is the consumer's unwillingness to buy, no matter how much they meet the target demographic of their business. We see this more frequently in new technologies or anything that requires some type of cultural shift. Think of cell phones in the 80s. None of us wanted them. We all have two now. Social media is one. You just have to be aware of where your business is going to fall into that ambivalence.
Okay. So once we're looking at the types of competition, it helps to know where you're going to find the information that you need to complete this section of your homework. So there are three primary places you're going to go. First is traditional internet. You're going to visit the company's websites. You can look at different rating sites like Yelp. You can also try to become a customer and experience that business as a customer would, and it will give you a different perspective of that experience. You can find out what they say, how they say it. You may not necessarily have to pull the trigger and make a purchase, but you can go so far down that that pipeline so that you can see what they're really offering. And then, of course, make sure you're checking the company's social media pages, because that will keep you up to date on what they're doing that's a little bit more new and exciting or transient in nature that isn't as sedentary stuff that stays on their website. So that said, we need the competitor information, their name, their address, website, and approximately how many years they've been in business. You can use ranges 5+, 25+, less than a year, that kind of thing. And then we need some information on what they're selling. So what particular product lines are they offering? Are they the same as what you'll be doing, or are they different? If they're different, how so? And if possible, where are they sourcing them from? We're going to ask you for the competitor's location. And when you're taking a look at the competitor's location, the types of information that we're looking for is really, what is that location like? What type of commercial space is it? How large, the size square feet? How is it designed or fit up for operations? What type of condition is it in? What kind of signage do they have? What is the visibility, parking, and who else is in the neighborhood? I apologize, there is a duplicate question in your workbook, so you can ignore it the second time. And then we're looking at competitors' pricing strategy. So typically businesses fall into one of three different pricing categories: low, mid, to high, for whatever their product or service is. So kind of think of Walmart, Target, and Nordstrom's as your benchmarks, or bookkeepers, accountants versus CPAs. Where is this business going to fall on that spectrum? And then based on your knowledge of the competitor, check any and all of these that apply for where they're putting their business in the marketplace. And if you're not sure, kind of scour them out. The internet is one of those areas that you really have to do some looking to necessarily find the people that you're looking for, but they may be targeting a different demographic, in which case they have a higher level of visibility. We also ask you to give us some information on what your competitor does really well. It can be anything from product sourcing, the variety of merchandise or services that they offer. Is it in their display? Is it in their branding and marketing messaging? What type of advertising, marketing, social media? Do they close the sale, customer service, or is their location just top-notch? And once you've taken a look at what they do really well, we're going to ask you to take a look at what they could improve. So we go by the theory that no business is perfect. They must be doing something pretty well if they're still in business, and they must be able to improve on something because, again, nobody is perfect. So we ask you to take a look at both the good and the bad. And then we ask you to take a look at how you plan on being different. You don't want to be a carbon copy of everything that's out there, so how will you be different? All right, so that was a quick rundown of the homework. You'll need to do, all of that information was in your business plan workbook if you missed it. If you have any questions on the type of information that I'm looking for in that section, feel free to send me an email or give me a call. You need to do an analysis of 3 competitors. So you're going to do the same exercise 3 times. It's probably the easiest homework you're going to have in the entire process. Are there any questions about some of the things that I was just speaking about? All right, so now we're going to get into customer service. There we go. So here's a pop quiz, and please do participate in these portions of the program. It will go much faster for everybody, and hopefully you'll have a better time on this webinar if you do participate. So what percentage of unhappy customers are actually going to complain to the business that they're unhappy?
64%. 4%.
Okay, so the answer is 4%. Which is a slight problem for businesses, because if only 4% of their unhappy customers are complaining, it means that there are 96% of unhappy customers that they never know about. And if they don't know anything about it, they can't do anything to fix it. But there's a couple of key components in customer service that are going to be really important when you're developing these for-profit businesses. And although some of these theories apply to non-for-profit operations, they become much more critical in a for-profit setting. The first one is that when it comes to customer service, there's a very big reality out there. And that is that customer service is 100% the perception of the customer. So what you think, how you think you performed in providing customer service is irrelevant. You could bend over backwards, give them your firstborn, and they can still think that that's not sufficient because it's their perception. And part of the problem with it being the perception of the customer is that they bring with them all of the baggage from every other customer service experience that they've ever had. And you have no control over that. You have no control over how well somebody treated them before or how poorly somebody treated them before, but you were evaluated based on those experiences that they're bringing with them to your business. And that makes it a little bit tough for businesses, specifically small businesses, to really grasp this customer service component. So that said, I have a little exercise for everyone. If you could really quickly just jot down some notes of the best ever customer service that you've had versus the worst ever customer service that you had. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share mine. but there's a couple of things that you need to know about me first. Most of my career has been spent working in the hospitality industry, which is a very customer service focused industry. They tend to be about 10 to 15 steps ahead of the rest of the business industries on delivering customer service. And then the other thing you need to know is that I like to impulse buy cars. And when I say I like to impulse buy cars, I usually decide that I'm going to buy a car on my way into work in the morning. And by that afternoon, I have usually purchased a car. Sometimes I test drive them, sometimes I don't. But I have purchased about 10 cars in my life, so this is a pretty regular experience. And what I find really funny is that my best ever customer service experience and my worst ever customer service experience are both in purchasing cars. So that said, my best experience purchasing a car took place in the Boston area. It was at the Mazda dealership off of I-95, and I had a car registered in New York State. I had decided that I got tired of stopping at the gas stations every other day and wanted to downsize into more of a sedan. So I stopped into the Mazda dealership and said, you know, I want to buy this. They were great, and I said, oh, here's the catch. I need you to register this car in New York State. And they said, sure, no problem. We can do it. We can have it done in 2 days. The only thing that we can't do is your inspection because we aren't an inspection location for New York. Sounded reasonable to me. Show up 2 days later. The car is ready to go. It's got New York plates. It's got the New York State registration. They took care of everything, not a single glitch. And in reality, it was perfect, and they went way above and beyond what they really should have had to do for the average customer. So that was my best. Now you have to fast forward about 3 years, and I am now living in the Adirondacks, and that nice little sedan is not working as well for me because I'm driving in mountain snow every day. And I decide on my way to school that I'm going to buy a new car, one that has four-wheel drive. So I go to the Honda dealership in Plattsburgh, and I try to buy a car. And the key word is try. Everything that I asked for or asked a question for, I was met with resistance. And I kept proceeding because I really wanted that particular car. They screwed up the financing. They tried to give me one that was a different color than what I had purchased. You know, all along the roads, everything was bad. So finally, a week and a half later, I walk away with the car. 24 hours later, I get a telephone survey. And they're asking me to rate my experience at the dealership. Now, because I've worked in hospitality and customer service, I'm aware very consciously of my experiences and the baggage that I'm bringing to the different transactions. And it was the holidays, so I decided to be really nice, and I rated the guy average. And the dealership average, the overall experience average. Even though reality, it was below average. The next day, the car dealer called me up to yell at me for rating me average, or for rating them average. And I thought, you know what, it really can't get any worse than this. And I was right, it really couldn't. I've never been yelled at for giving an opinion that somebody asked me to give them about my experience of doing business with them. So now that I've shared mine, who else would like to share some of theirs? And if I don't get volunteers, I'm going to start calling on people.
Okay, we got a volunteer here.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Kate.
Hello, how are you?
Gary Bellows, how are you?
Very good. So what was your best customer experience as a customer?
My best experience would be with LL Bean. Bought a pair of boots, and a year, I bought them for 6 months. They had a little put away, and when I took them out in the spring, they leather had rated on the top of the boot. Called them up, and what had happened, and they said, fine, put them in a box. Do you want the same model? I said, well, if the leather will remain intact, yes. They said, fine, here you go. And boots were back, and then back to me less than a week. So that's a kind of, I think, really great customer service. The one I'm having issue with now is the gas company. I'm on my 5th call, and I'm up to one of the owners now who has not called me back. The issue is that $2 worth for a 3-month period from February through May, which is, I think, 3 months. And the next delivery in May was made, and in June of 19th, which was 33 days later, I got a bill for $160 for 33 days of gas usage. So that seemed improbable, since the average gas usage during the winter when I was running my fireplace was $22 a month. And for 33 days, 160 seemed a bit obsessive. All 4 previous people on the calls have agreed with me and said they would get that fixed. And we're now into month 2. We've moved up to the owner now, and he has not made the return call. So I would say an average for service.
I would say that's a pretty bad customer experience. So just to point out a couple of key components of what made one good versus the other bad. The key difference between those 2 experiences was the responsiveness of who you were dealing with. When you were dealing with LL Bean, they took care of it. They took care of it right away. They verified that they were handling your problem to your satisfaction, versus the gas company, which can't even be bothered to return a telephone call, which then becomes frustrating. And you've had this other experience, which is fabulous, and you're wondering why they can't act that way too. Right? That's the baggage you're bringing to the event.
Right.
Great examples. Who else would like to share? Anyone else? Let's get one more person to volunteer.
Okay, this is Gateway again. My name is Ellen. My best experience was also with LL Bean, as a matter of fact, and it was with a winter coat that I had for many, many, many years. The coat was still good, but the zipper had worn out. We were vacationing in Maine and stopped at the store. So on a lark, my husband says, ask him about your zipper. And I thought, no, it's, the coat is, I've gotten good wear out of it. It's fine. So we did go to customer service, asked them about the zipper. They said, we can replace it right now for you if you like. And I said, but the coat's like, 8 years old. They said, no problem. They replaced the zipper while I waited, and no questions asked, no charges, nothing. Very pleasant. So that was my best customer experience. My worst customer experience was actually in my role here at Gateway. I'm an event planner. So I plan our fundraising events for our not-for-profit. And we had a golf tournament at a local golf resort who will remain nameless. And as we arrived and got the golfers off on their game, we went indoors to set up for the dinner and the prizes and the raffle. And the ballroom we were shown to literally had a waterfall coming from the ceiling down into a bucket on a table in the middle of the room. So when I asked the event manager, what's this all about? Is this a new decorating theme? And she said, oh, no, we just have some problems with the pipes and we have a leak. And I said, well, we're not having our event in this room with the waterfall. You have to get us another room. So after she complained a little, she then found another ballroom. So my staff and I start setting up. Halfway through setting up, we were really dying of the heat. So I called her and I said, can you turn up the air conditioning in this room? It's very warm. The golfers will be coming in off the course. They'll be hot. I would like it to be a cooler environment. And she said, oh, well, the air conditioning's not working in this room. So I said, well, then why did you put us in here in the first place? Get us another room. So finally, the third ballroom that we got did seem to work out for us. But, of course, it was a lot of extra work for my staff to get everything prepared in time, which we fortunately did because we believe in good customer service, so that when the golfers came in off the course, everything was fine. But, I felt that she should have been more attentive in the first place and given us the best room to begin with.
I would absolutely agree. So what is your likelihood of returning?
So you don't go there anymore.
Exactly.
We have a tournament course which is very attentive to our needs, and we go there every year now.
And that's perfect. So that kind of leads into the next piece that we're going to talk about, and that gets into the costs of a customer. So when you're looking at why customer service and customer retention and loyalty and why do all of these things matter, it really comes down to the numbers and money. On average, it takes 6 to 7 times more money to acquire a new customer through sales and marketing than it does to retain a customer. And in the buying decision of consumers, there's been quite a bit of research. And one of the most compelling pieces of that research is that price is really not the main reason. Hello? Sorry. Price is not the main reason for customer churn. It's actually due to the overall poor quality of customer service when a customer makes the decision to stop doing business with you. So if we go back to that golf course example, the likelihood that if they came back with a lower price, that Gateway would go back to doing business with them is actually quite low, and it's because of the way they were treated, the lack of attentiveness. It's not that you didn't expect it to be, issue-free, because again, people are imperfect. It's how they respond. There's nothing worse than when you present a problem and say, I need you to resolve this, and then they give you a solution that has a different problem, and then you have to go back again and ask them to resolve it a third time, right? Your frustration levels just rise and rise and rise. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at your businesses that you have the mechanisms in place. So when we're talking about some of the costs of a new customer, so in the example that I'm about to give you, if it costs you $15 to secure a new customer, your annual expense related to those new customers is roughly $15,000 in my example. If you are looking to retain that same customer base, the cost is only $2,100. So if you can save $13,000 that then flows to that bottom line and becomes that money that can then go into your nonprofits, it's a very big deal. When we look at the math of customer retention, again, in an example where you need 100 customers instead of 1,000 over the course of a year, say this is a month. For every new customer that you're getting, if it costs you $15, you're going to spend about $1,500. That same customer, if you save one from the month before, it's one less that you have to get, and it's going to cost you approximately $2.14, which translates to $214.29, which represents a savings of about $1,200 a month. And I'm pretty sure your nonprofits could do quite a bit of money with that $1,200. If nothing else, you're masters of making a lot out of nothing. So then the bottom line comes down to is that its loyalty results from customer bonding and does not automatically follow from successive customer interactions. You need to have a plan to build that customer bond, because if you have a bond and you make a mistake, you're given more of an opportunity, A, to even learn that you made the mistake, and 2, to recover from it. Building the bond with a customer is one of the most often overlooked aspects of customer loyalty and customer service. So I don't know if this is the pop quiz that you all saw already. Hopefully it's not. So again, please share your answers. If you had to guess, what percentage of the buying experience do customers attribute to the way they're being treated?
95.
70. Anyone else? Throw a guess 70. Out there. 70? You guys are right, or most of you are right. 70% is the number. So when they're looking at what they're going to buy and where they're going to buy it from, 70% of that decision is based on how they were treated during their previous interaction or the reputation of the company that they're doing business with. And along those lines, when you're looking at customer service, I like to highlight some of the really great and some of the really bad. In 2013, there was a published list of Hall of Fame businesses for customer service. Amazon.com came out #1 nationally. And they were competing against brick and mortars and everyone else. And I found it very telling that a website where no one interacts with anyone was #1 for customer service. And they got there by creating a website model and a business model where they realized that customers and their loyalty is the linchpin to their success. If people don't come back repeatedly, they will fail. And so with that as their core mission, getting their customers to repeat, they've been very successful. They've applied that to a very user-friendly website. They have mechanisms in place to encourage repeat business, like one-click shopping, no hassle returns. They have free shipping options, and they've been able to create a sense of community through their review process. If you want to know what other people are thinking, you can read all of the reviews. And then in addition to that, they track your spending so they can come up with recommendations of things that you will probably like. And they're pretty good at it. About 90% of the time, their customers have found that the recommendations list is something that they would like. So in a business that meets with nobody and people don't talk to each other, they've done a fabulous job of really developing the concept of teaching their customers that they matter. Marriott came in second, and their rating was attributed to the hiring policies of the company. For those of you that are not aware, Marriott hires solely on personality traits. Their belief is they can teach anyone to do anything. However, you can't teach people to be nice, friendly, kind. And those are inherent traits within a person. So that's one of their primary components. Every year they have national awards for their line employees. These are the employees that make the least amount of money in their company, and they're rewarded for their stellar customer service. In 2013, their winner was a breakfast hostess for a Marriott in Florida. And her job really is to, keep the food out on the breakfast bar for those of you that ever stayed in one of those places. And she was given the award because her customers were so impressed with the fact that she paid attention to where her hotel was and who was actually staying there. Her hotel is located next to a cancer treatment center. And she would get to know all of her customers. So she would know who was going through chemo. And anybody who she didn't see that she would normally see down in breakfast, she would go room to room and deliver breakfast to them. And she had paid enough attention so that she was delivering the things that they would normally eat. And that's an example of how Marriott constantly and consistently hires people that care and want to go above and beyond. UPS came in, I think it was #5, and their success was attributed to the fact that in an industry where very few delivery personnel are actually employees of the company and instead of what are called route holders, UPS has a long-held commitment to maintaining all of their drivers being staff members of the company. They embrace their union, and if you know anybody who's worked for UPS, they never leave. And it's through that longevity within their organization that they attribute the majority of their success. Now, when it comes to the Hall of Shame, you will notice that if you ever research this, that it's almost always telecommunications, communications, and finance-based businesses that find themselves at the bottom of the list, at least in a large majority. Sometimes somebody else gets in there. The worst 3...
Hey, Joe, this is Joe.
Hi, Joe. The worst 3 for the Hall of Shame were Comcast, Dish Network, and Citibank. All 3 of them have really poor communication with their customers, whether it's horribly difficult to navigate call centers. They have a tendency to miss or be late for appointments. They like high-pressure sales tactics, and many times they fail at their core services. So hopefully all of you will build models where you can be at the Hall of Shame level instead of the Hall of Fame level. When you're looking to build your customer loyalty, there's a couple of customer stages that you need to be aware of. you're never going to go from 0 to 10 overnight. It's going to take a couple of, or several, successive interactions with your customers in order to get there. So you kind of think of it as walking up the steps of a ladder. All customers start off as what's called a try customer. You may have heard the term try test. These are your first-time customers. When they're doing business with you, it is 100% about them, their personal needs and wants. If you fail to meet them, they won't come back, and they're not going to complain. There's relatively limited interaction. They're not going to linger. They're not going to want to interact with you. And the relationship is the most tenuous at that stage. Once they've done business with you once and they come back, the familiar customers are those that are returning to your business for the second, third, or fourth time. So still relatively new, and they are, quote unquote, a returning customer. However, they're not what we would consider a regular customer. You have a little bit of opportunity to get feedback from them, but their purchases are pretty much all still about them. If you make a mistake and don't recover from it, and with these customers, you will have also lost them forever. The repeat customer is that customer who's done business with you 5 or more times. They're that returning customer. They're familiar with your business. They are familiar with the employees of your business. A relationship starts to develop both between the customer and the business and the customer and the employees. They also have a higher level of expectation than somebody who's been coming into your door for the first time. So they've had at least 4 experiences, I'm guessing most of which are positive if they're coming in for that 5th time. So they have an expectation that you're going to do things a certain way. The like customer, which is a step up from the repeat, are also returning customers. But these are the customers that have a higher level of interaction, both with the business and with the employees. And these are also the businesses that kind of start to integrate their purchases with your business into their lifestyle. So kind of think of, on your way into work, where do you stop and get your coffee every morning? Most of the population stops at the same place every day. And their decision to buy from there are several factors, but one of it is they like it. It's part of their routine. They like the employees, people know them, they have conversation. It's not a cold, lifeless interaction. They have high expectations, and you have a sense of loyalty at this point. And these customers that are not just repeat, but they're resilient to competition. A gas station with coffee could open up right across the street or next door, and those like customers are not going to go there. It's not about price. It's about the experience, and it's about their belief that this business is the best place for them to be. As unconscious that may be in their decision-making, that's what it's all about. Once you have these like customers, they can then be built into what are called trust customers. And these are customers where you can start to build that advanced level of bonding, and they have a very strong sense of loyalty. There's a strong relationship through the eyes of the customer between the business and the customer and the employees of the customer. These are the customers that get upset when someone gets fired and want to know all of the details because they feel like they have an emotional investment in that business and all of the employees. And believe it or not, the trust phase is where word of mouth starts to begin. So as much as they may have tried it, they may be familiar with it, they may be a repeat customer of it, and they may even like it enough to integrate it into their lifestyle. It's not until you reach the trust phase that people are going to start to tell their friends and family that they should be doing business with you as well. The holy grail of all customers is what we call the advocate. And the advocate customers have the highest level of customer loyalty. They have very high expectations of the business and its employees. And they actually become the unofficial sales force of your business. They actively tell and encourage people to do business with you. There is that high-level advanced customer bonding, and word of mouth grows, and they are 100% resilient to competition. Nothing a competitor is going to do is going to steal them away from you. So kind of think of your favorite restaurant, that place that you go to that you will always go to. You love everybody in there. You want all of your friends and family to eat there. Strangers that you meet, you're telling them about this place. That's the advocate. So I have another pop quiz for you. Hopefully this isn't the one you all had the answers to. How many positive experiences does it take to overcome a bad one? Come on, shout out your answers.
Wow.
Meeny, meeny, money. Well, you were right. 12 is correct. And why that matters is if every time you make a mistake, if you have to get a customer to come back 12 times after that for that mistake to be completely irrelevant to the customer perception of your business, you want to limit the number of mistakes that you're making, and you definitely want to participate in something that's called service recovery. And service recovery is really a paradox that states, with a highly effective service recovery, a service or product failure offers a business a chance to achieve a higher satisfaction rating from customers than if the failure had never happened. So let's go back to the customer service examples, the best. Both of them were LL Bean. That particular company, they offer what's called a 100% unconditional satisfaction guarantee. And when you offer that, it's for the lifetime of their product. And just in this little conference call, we've had 2 people that have gone back to them for service failures. And because of the way they were treated during that exchange, you will forever be loyal to LL Bean. Right? Their products mean more to you now than when they were perfect. Because they had a failure, and it's how they handled that failure that will then keep you engaged with that organization moving forward. Now, when it comes to service recovery, there's a couple of different phases. Ideally, you want to get to what's called the solicitous phase. Infused is a little bit harder, and most companies don't get there. But you definitely don't want to be what we call a doomed company. And this is a company that doesn't have complaint handling, angry customers are ignored. You pretty much don't exist, and they don't care if you ever do business with them again. Think back to the gas company that we heard the story about earlier. A lot of companies fall between the reactive and active listening phases of service recovery. And this is when a customer takes the time to tell them that there's a problem. They strictly react. The difference between reactive and active listening is that it is 100% reaction. There's still a chain to go through. There isn't any empowerment. In the active listening phase, the employees are a little bit more empowered to handle the situation on the behalf of the company. And they also practice that active listening skill where not only are you listening to what the customer has to tell you, you are then rewording what they've told you and repeating it back to them to make sure that you're handling the problem that they want solved. Because there's nothing worse than handling a problem and have it not be the problem that's going to fix the long-term solution. Think back to the golf course. Now, companies that are solicitous in their service recovery, these are the companies that actually actively seek feedback. And if you seek feedback from your customers, you're more likely to change that 4% of customer complaint to 90% of customer complaint. Just by asking the questions, how was everything? Could we have done anything better? And this is the best feedback that you can get from your customers. I mean, as much as it's great to have people tell us how wonderful we are, it's not nearly as helpful as somebody telling us something that we could do better. And when you have competition and customers and changes in market and changes in economy, getting that feedback is really what's going to make the difference between success and failure. So you want to make sure that you can be as close to solicitous as you can in the process of implementing your service recovery programs. Infused is a great goal, but again, very few companies are able to get there. An infused customer or service recovery looks at all of the different places during the customer transaction where you can solicit that feedback, and it becomes part of a relationship building process where you're trying to address everything before it ever becomes a problem, and there's a high level of anticipation there. And again, as much as I think it's a great goal to have, it's not something that as many businesses can get to. When you're putting together a service recovery program, there's a couple of key principles that you need to be aware of. First and foremost, you have to teach your employees how to listen actively. And that is really the art of listening what the customer has to say, funneling through all of the information that they're giving you to make sure that you're understanding what the root problem is, and then repeating it back to the customer without using their words verbatim. The other thing that you have to be aware of is that you have to be prepared to take responsibility for failures within your organization. There's nothing wrong with saying, you're right, I was wrong, especially if you are wrong. It's very critical that you can take responsibility. It also helps to have some empathy. Nobody wants that person that you can tell they're just humoring you and doing what they can to get you to go away in this process. So you want to make sure that the empathy is part of it. And if you don't have empathy, at least sympathy. You also want to make sure you give a genuine and sincere apology. And I absolutely must say that the apologies cannot have qualifiers. So if your apology is, I'm so sorry, but, it's not an apology. It's an excuse. So make sure you train your employees so that they don't give those excuse-based apologies, because quite honestly, if you're a customer that's unhappy to begin with, and the minute you hear that but, you know somebody's going to try and turn that back on you, and the relationship becomes more sour than it was before they opened their mouth. And then the other thing you need to do is empower the employees that are going to be in a position to hear the customer feedback and customer complaints, the power to do something about it. You know, give them guidelines, give them training, give them ranges of things that they can handle on their own. If a customer doesn't have to wait to hear from 3 levels up the food chain to have something resolved, it doesn't need to be as expensive to resolve it. The customer goes away happier faster, and that's where you build that loyalty of somebody who they didn't expect you to be perfect, but they expected you to handle it. So for our next pop quiz, a dissatisfied customer will tell how many people about their experience?
15.
Is that the one that was up on the screen? So that's very true. It is 15 people. And I don't know how many of you this description represents, but I am definitely this person. So if I go somewhere and I have good customer service, yeah, I might tell people about something about it, I might not. If I have excellent customer service, I'm definitely going to tell my core group around me, my friends and family. But if I have a really bad experience, I'm the type of person that likes to make new friends just so that I can tell them. I will talk to strangers in an elevator. I just made a whole bunch of new friends today and told them all about the horrible car dealership in Plattsburgh, New York. Right? I like to make sure that everybody knows. A lot of people represent myself. We're much more likely, culturally as a society, to complain than we are to reward. So you want to keep that in mind when you're trying to build that customer service or customer recovery programs within your businesses. It also helps if you manage customer expectations. And why you want to be managing those expectations is you want to be able to make sure that your customers have the right expectation for your business. You know, if they think they're going to the Taj Mahal and they're actually going to the Super 8, they're not going to be happy. There's nothing you can do about that. So it's important that you, through customer education, really manage what that experience is going to be like. Be true to who you are. If you're a low-end provider, be a low-end provider. If you're a high-end provider, be a high-end provider. If you're somewhere in the middle, then be somewhere in the middle. But it's really important that you never try to pretend to be something that you're not, and that you communicate what you are through customer education. It also helps to make it easy for customers to complain. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to simply ask them, how was your purchase? How was your experience? What could we do better? You'd be surprised what happens when you ask those questions. If you give them open-ended questions, you will get open-ended answers. If you give them yes or no, you're going to get yes or no. And if you give them a scale to rate you on, you're going to get rated on a scale. I prefer open-ended questions when I'm soliciting feedback because I tend to learn more not only about the customer, but I tend to learn more about what the real problem is, and I can then question related to that problem without looking like I'm interrogating them. It also helps to understand who your customers are, what's important to them. Different demographics for customer pools value different things. So doing some research into who those customers are really does help you manage their expectations and handle the customer education piece better. Wherever possible, build a one-on-one relationship with your customers, and also make sure you have that service recovery program in place for those instances of failure. So I'd like everybody to take just a minute and write down some things that you can do within your for-profit businesses to delight customers that have had a problem. What are the steps you're going to take as an organization? Does anyone have any questions on how to do this? And would anyone like to share? Okay, so moving on, I also would like everyone to take just a couple of minutes to identify how you plan on making your company accessible to customers for issuing complaints and feedback. You know, is it they have to make a phone call, they have to stop in, or are they going to have to write a letter, send an email, text you, social media, or are you going to only read about it on the rating sites? And last but not least, how are you going to make sure that you and your employees understand what it is your customers really want? If you've ever listened to somebody complain, and usually the angrier and more upset they are, the harder it is to get to the root of the problem. And so what type of active listening techniques are you going to teach your employees or learn yourself to be able to get to that root of the problem? And now my last pop quiz. So if you were to have a 2% increase in customer retention, the impact that that would have on decreasing costs would be equal to what percentage?
10%?
10% is right on. So believe it or not, keeping customers in your business does the same thing to your bottom line as though you were cutting costs by 10%. And for for-profit businesses, that's a very big deal. What we found in the recession is that people wanted and continue to do business more with people and businesses that they liked. It came down to a loyalty factor wherever possible. And as a result, the larger corporations and conglomerates took a bigger hit than the small businesses. And really it was customer loyalty that enabled a lot of small businesses to survive. And since recessions are cyclical, there will be another. And if you can have that same impact through customer retention, it's also easier and it doesn't cost as much. So those are my thoughts on customer service, as well as the competition section of your homework. Is there anyone who has any questions or would like to share anything in relation to customer service and things that you've learned along the way?
I've learned that when people have a negative experience, if you give them some kind of coupon, that helps to repeat your business.
I would agree. I would also agree that an I'm sorry goes just as far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to give them an incentive to come back, but if you just give them the coupon without the I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm. You're still not going to go back.
You're still not going to go back. And there's nothing wrong with quote-unquote buying your customers. You buy customers through your sales and marketing efforts. So when you have somebody that's unhappy, if they're looking for some type of compensation for whatever the problem was, there's nothing wrong with giving them that. But you do have to weigh the compensation versus the potential of the customer. So if somebody's looking for a $1,000 refund and they spent $10, you're less likely to do that.
No.
But if they're looking for a coupon for a discount for a future purchase or something along those lines, or their money back for return of their item, those are all very viable. And I think you're right. If you give them a reason to come back to you, they will. I wanted to thank you for participating in today's webinar.